Hi, welcome to the Three Times podcast. Today I'm talking to singer-songwriter, organiser of gigs and festivals and ukulele teacher Ian K. Brown. Ian is one of the best known performers on the local music circuit, but he has also performed at festivals up and down the land. In this episode, Ian draws on his many years of experience to provide insights on the prospects for up-and-coming musicians and the challenges they face in developing a performing career. And he gives us a live rendition of his song You Can Stay, in which he reflects on the permanence of experiences that touch the heart. As always, we try to include special effects for that genuine Northumberland experience. And today it was the sound of torrential rain. Listen on headphones for best effect.
I remember the time that we sat in the sun with family and friends. May long it go on. And oh, who would believe? And oh, that's all we would need. And time changed it all. I remember the time that we played in the street.
Welcome, Ian Brown.
Nice to be here.
Thank you for coming on the Three Times podcast. Can I first ask you how you would describe yourself as a musician and performer?
Cool, that's quite a difficult one because I've always been someone who played the guitar and who's loved singing, and certainly from my late teens through my early 20s I used to perform in folk clubs around Newcastle mainly, and then a family comes along and you have to earn money, and a lot of that musical side got lost. I did use my music a little bit when I was a teacher, a deputy head, but not a lot. I had a few dips back into performing in the 1990s, but I didn't really get back into music until I got made redundant from my job as a deputy head community for Northumberland County Council. And that probably was one of the best things that happened to me, because the job that I always wanted changed over the years, over 23 years. At that point I decided I would do things that I enjoy. Unfortunately, I've been able to make sufficient money from those to pay my way. I wasn't going to get rich or anything, and things that kind of fell my way, I eventually got appointed by Northumberland County Music Service to work for them as someone with no musical qualifications at all, and the head of the music service at the time was the late Hilary Gordon, who also became a very good friend of mine. And because I was a teacher that had gone into the music service, she got me to do a lot of the really good projects, other than just teaching guitar one-to-one, in special lessons in schools. I did a lot of whole class teaching. We had a thing which was the Big Sing, where I went into schools and taught kids a lot of songs from the last 60 years. And then eventually we had a big performance. I did a thing of teaching children playground songs with lots of actions, which I did with a friend, not a friend, became a friend, with someone who worked for the Sage, because it was a project linked with the Sage Gateshead. And we had a great time, and it's interesting how all of those other things opened doors to expand the kind of things that I did in music. I started to get back into performance, and I hadn't done any performances since the 1990s, in about 2010, when I thought I'd better go out and try and start doing things. And I remember nervously ringing up a folk club in Carlisle Folk and Blues Club, just to book a spot on one of their singers' nights. And I went along, played my couple of songs, and then they asked me to do support for a guy called Brooks Williams, who is one of the top blues acoustic guitarists, not just in this country, he's actually American, but he's one of the best around in the world. And that was the start of me getting back into performance. The person that I worked with from the Sage, doing the singing stuff in the playground, she invited me to join another band in Newcastle called the 10th Avenue Band, and I did 2 years playing with them and thoroughly enjoyed the stuff that we did. It was totally different from, if you like, being a folk singer. And I was also doing a lot of different stuff in schools. I stopped working for the music service and became self-employed when they did a reorganisation, and I then started to do less in schools and do a few things that I sorted out. I got into music festivals. I was really lucky to get into music festivals. I think as a result of a link of working in one of my schools, I got asked if I would run a stage for Corbridge Festival, for example. And I said, well, if you give me a spot as well. So I got a performance spot, ran the stage, and I ran that up until Corbridge Festival stopped. And I had a great time at Corbridge Festival. I even started running ukulele workshops for the festival as well. And that's one of the things that I was asked to do when I first started working for Northumberland Music Service. Can you teach ukulele? And I said, well, I've never picked one up before in my life. And then they said, oh, it's okay, we've got a book. And they gave me this book, and I looked at it and I said, this is absolute rubbish. I'm not using this. And I've just done it my way. And there's things that I've learned that worked and things that I learned that didn't work. But generally things did work. And then getting back into music festivals, I knew Maddy Prior from Steel Ice Band, and I got asked to do the first music festival that she put on and she called it Stepping Stones. And the second year I was involved with that, I did some managing of stages, and also did my first ukulele workshop at a festival. And it actually wasn't that many people, I think about 10 people. And then I've started doing workshops at festivals. When I now speak to a lot of my, whether you call them colleagues, but people that I know that are great, really good musicians, they talk about how difficult it is to get gigs, to get into festivals. I found that if I offered doing a ukulele workshop, as well as, well, I can manage a stage as well if you want, that was a good way of getting in. Mm-hmm. And I think since about 2010, I then have a really nice summer, going around quite a few very different festivals, doing workshops, running stages, performing with my guitar, sometimes doing all three. And there's one other thing that we've done at some of the festivals with my middle son, when I got made redundant as a deputy head teacher after 23 years, we set up a little film business, and we would make music videos for festivals as well as doing other stuff as well. So, yeah, making a living out of music I've seen is quite difficult. Even people that you assume to be incredibly successful, they diversify, because unless you're really big, you don't necessarily make sufficient money to make, even a reasonable living.
Yeah.
You've got to work really hard at it. So any musicians that make their living out of performance, they're doing really well, and they really deserve a lot of respect.
Yeah. From what you say, it sounds as though you were quite entrepreneurial and speculative. When an opportunity presented itself, you put yourself forward. Now, was payment a factor in any of those chances? Did you say, "Oh well, I'll do that for nothing on spec," or did you sort of say, "Well, yeah, fair pay for a day's work," kind of thing?
Well, that's an interesting one. Working for the Northumberland Music Service, I obviously got paid.
Mm-hmm.
And if I got asked to do something different and be asked, "Do you think you can do that?" I said, "Well, we'll only find out if I try." And generally, it always worked. And I learned a lot about, having been a teacher for 23 years, no, longer than that, 26 years prior to working for the music service. I probably learned more about teaching working for the music service. Probably one of the main things I learned about teaching, that you can't teach unless you engage. You've got to engage. And that became the key to just about everything. In terms of getting into festivals, you don't get paid a lot at festivals. Festivals really struggle to break even, unless it's somewhere like Glastonbury that can sell TV rights and all that stuff. But a lot of the sort of smallish festivals that still have budgets that you're talking about maybe 100,000 quid, there is a lot that can still be lost by the person behind it. So they cannot risk offering a lot. From my perspective, being involved with a festival, I think all the festivals I've been involved with, yes, I've been paid. And it makes a difference. But the other difference it makes to me is that sometimes doing something at one festival for not a lot of money, it opens doors to others. And having got back into music later in life, I then have the opportunity to see and play at festivals and meet, and in some cases become friends with, some of the icons of folk music that I grew up with. There are one or two occasions where it is quite lucrative, and then other times it's not, because or I know, that actually raising money to pay for artists to play in any situation, you've got to raise it. Otherwise, you've got to find it from somewhere else, and grants are really hard to come by.
Yeah.
Unless you're very good at it, unless you're in the right place and know the right people. Some of the smaller festivals fall through the net, and just don't get anything. Or, if they do, they've got someone working really hard to get as much local sponsorship as they can that just tops it up. But even before you pay for any artists, you've still got to pay for your infrastructure, people to run your PA systems on stages, premises, advertising. There's loads of stuff. And then when you start covering those costs, that's when you've got what's left. It's got to pay for your artists.
Who's the bad guy? Sure as hell ain't me. I'm looking round, it's maybe him or maybe she. Who's the bad guy? Could be anybody. If you've got strings that pull, you'll be what you will be. I'm driving in my motor car and I'm late once again. The driver of the car in front is driving like he's lame. I'll take a chance and go for broke, then cut back in again. I dodge police cars and cameras in my deadly working day. Who's the bad guy? It sure as hell ain't me. I'm looking round, it's maybe him or maybe she. Who's the bad guy? Could be anybody. If you've got strings that pull, you'll be what you will be.
Who were your inspirations when you were growing up?
When I was at school in the 60s, I had a teacher that introduced me to the music of a guy called Leon Rosselson. Fantastic songwriter. He came along to a festival that I love. It hasn't been on since COVID. A place called Castle Carrick, which is just south of Brampton. And I've been fortunate to have been involved with it on a number of occasions, 6 or 7. And the last time it was on, before COVID, the patron of the festival, another one of my icons who I did get to know quite well, a guy called Roy Bailey, he died. And then there was a big tribute act where we got a lot of people that had worked with Roy over the years and performed his songs, and that was like a who's who of English folk music. And there was one big show which I also filmed. I've got it on video, but Leon Rosselson was there as an 80-year-old, and I went backstage and I said, "You won't have any idea who I am, Leon, but I want a photograph because I'm a real groupie." And it was just really good to see him do his stuff. But yes, there's a lot of artists like that I see, and it's just great crossing paths with them, and also seeing a lot of the new talent that's coming along. So I just find I'm very lucky, you know. And I do think there is an element of luck, but you have to take your opportunities. I suppose I'm still part of a society where there are those opportunities to take advantage of. For some people, in some societies, they're not there. But I just feel incredibly lucky to, have another career after teaching. It's like life after death, really, isn't it? Yeah. And get to see and be part of something that I never thought I'd be part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's an interesting point you make there, because the people who comment on music and music making generally on social media and in the press and so on, say that there has never been a better time for people to make music. This is the era when music has been democratized, because you can make music in your room on a computer. You don't need to go to a fancy studio. You don't need this. You don't need expensive technology to do it anymore. And it's a fair point that it is possible for somebody, if they really want to make music, they can do it. There's nothing stopping them. It's like somebody saying, "Oh, I want to be a writer." Well, you can just write. There's nothing stopping you actually writing. The obstacle comes if you have expectations beyond that, and you want an audience who will pay attention to what you do, because there are so many people now making music that to attract the attention of an audience is quite difficult. So you do have to take the extra step to go to an open mic session and pester people to get a few minutes on a stage so that you can get your music over to people, because there's no other way for people to hear what you're doing, is there?
I agree totally with what you've said. I think it is a lot easier to pick up an instrument and learn it now. Guitars are comparably a lot cheaper than they used to be for a quality that
they are much better than they used to be, aren't they?
And it's phenomenal how cheap you can get guitars. And you can pick things up off the internet. You could watch someone play. Once you've learned some basics, I mean, I never had lessons. That doesn't mean I didn't learn from anybody. You watched people, you listened to LPs, I mean, you ruined a lot of LPs by lifting the needle off. It's better when tapes came along, and even better now when you've got digital files that are a lot easier to, go back and play again. But now you've got YouTube. You can watch people's fingers. You can slow it up. And when you slow it up, it keeps the same pitch. So it's spot on. So people can learn, and there are probably a lot more really good performers all competing for that market, for that stage, whatever stage that might be.
Flying high in the sky on a paper-made kite, I look down, I see clouds like pillows in white, but I can't see the ground, there is nowhere to land, and my wings start to crumble like my castles in sand. You will love me tomorrow as you did yesterday, as the sun dries my wings and the clouds go away. I will touch down to earth, set my feet on the land, and I'll walk through the world, taking you by your hand.
But people learning, yes, there has got to be opportunities. Folk clubs, and I tend to think a lot of folk clubs are full of, there's an awful thing to say, and it may not be true of some folk clubs, but I've been to quite a lot, and they're often full of people like me, old men with guitars, but folk clubs have provided an opportunity for people to get up and play, and that's good. And then we have this rise in open mics, which is, if someone thinks that, well, I'm getting quite good, I wouldn't mind having a go at that, and they'll probably go along and make every mistake, because as soon as you're in front of people, particularly in an open mic situation where people aren't listening, they're having a pint and chatting to their mates, there's so many distractions, your heart rate goes up, you play things too fast, and you wonder why your fingers won't do what they're told. That happens anyway in a performance, or can do. And then, that's a good start for people. But when people have made that start, I think they've really got to start looking at people that play better than them. They've got to go to events that aren't open mics to see what the standard is, to get them onto better stages, even onto a better stage where they don't get paid again. They might be invited to do support for an act, and you might get 20 quid or something like that. But I think that the open mic scenario for some people is what they do all the time. And I think you've got to look and watch other performers, learn from them. I'm always learning from, that's a good song, or that's an interesting technique, that's a good bit of patter, I'm going to make that my own, because when you see people performing, particularly when you see them more than once, you realise that the spontaneity that they can come out with
is very well rehearsed.
In a way that you think it's just off the cuff. And when you are going to perform, a lot of people forget to practice what they're going to say between. I mean, sometimes I talk too much, but some of the time when I do that, it's because I don't want to play too many songs, you know. And but yeah, practice what you're going to say, because sometimes with a song there can be quite an important message that you sing the song to tell the story, to convey a message. Well, that is for me what folk songs are about. They're campaigning to right wrongs. They're trying to share feelings that people have had, whether it's the spurned farmer's daughter or the rebellious upstart that's fighting against the businessman who's trying to exploit the worker. But you want to tell the story. So you've got to think about how you introduce that and practice it. Mm-hmm. I think if you've got some local performers that can perform for not very much, that's great, but you still should pay them. Mm-hmm. And you've got to offer them maybe a food and drink voucher and then a nominal sum that makes sure that they are not out of pocket because of the festival. And to a certain extent, that's what I look at in terms of I don't want to be out of pocket because of a festival. There are sometimes I'll go to some places as a lost leader, in the hope that then I get something else out of it. But festivals can be, to play for not a lot of festivals, but for something they can open up quite a lot of doors.
Most of the musicians that I've come across while looking at grassroots music in the Northeast, most of them have been men. Do you know of any women who are either up and coming or established who are performing regularly?
With the events that I put on, I try to have a balance.
Yeah.
And whilst the last guests that I had, it was an all men's band, the next guest that I've got is female fronted, and it's Celia Bryce band. And I've seen her, and she's been a guest of one of my events before. Absolutely wonderful singer, and the band she has with her is great. At Wark, I've had Amy Thatcher and Fran Knowles, who are really quite most unusual, incredibly talented. Amy Thatcher obviously plays with one of Catherine Tickell's bands, and Fran Knowles has played with all kinds of people.
She plays with Katie Mack, doesn't she? I've seen her with Katie Mack.
Yeah, she also plays in this sort of globe-trotting percussion band called Spark. I think they've changed their name recently, and they get all dressed up in outfits and are lit up, and they're just an incredible percussion. And they do some really incredible stuff together, very complicated at times, and then they will do some stuff vocally, and they've got great voices. And they have recently won a FATIA award, FATEA, as Best Duo in this last year.
So Ian Brown, thank you very much for talking to us. We'll go upstairs and get the guitar sorted out.
I'll go and get my guitar.
Very good. All right then.
And it's one I use for singing. I'll see what it sounds like.
Right.
This song is a song about the good things in life, the bad things in life, the inevitable things in life. You might recognise some of the situations. There is a reference to 50p, and that is to do with the days when you had to or could still pay for the Dartford crossing in cash. It's called You Can Stay. It's the things that stay in our heart. Stay here if you like, that's alright with me.
You can stay here if you like, that's alright with me, 'cause I'm easy. Oh, I'm easy. Oh, so easy. Easier than I used to be. I saw my father one last time. I swear he smiled at me. I kissed him on his forehead, then borrowed 50p for the river, for the river, to cross the river, to cross the river to my home. You can stay here if you like, that's alright with me. You can stay here if you like, that's alright with me, 'cause I'm easy. Oh, so easy. Oh, I'm easy. Easier than I used to be. Did you get just what you want? 'Cause sure I cannot see. Time to look inside yourself and take your eyes off me. I'm not the reason, not the reason. I'm not the reason for the way things came to be. But you can stay here if you like, that's alright with me. You can stay here if you like, that's alright with me, 'cause I'm easy. Oh, I'm easy. Oh, so easy. Easier than I used to be. You turned and waved and smiled at me as your train pulled away. I'm always sad to see you go, but grateful when you stay. Makes me happy. Oh, so happy. Makes me happy just to spend some time with you. There's no good time to say goodbye, whenever that might be. So live and love with all your heart, be all that you can be. I will be with you, I will be with you, always with you. I'll be with you in my heart. But you can stay here if you like, that's alright with me. You can stay here if you like, that's alright with me, 'cause I'm easy. Oh, I'm easy. Oh, so easy. Easier than I used to be.
Thanks for listening to the 3 Times podcast. Ian has released 3 albums, all of which can be found on his Bandcamp page. The album Dancing with Shadows was produced by former Steel Ice Band bassist Rick Kemp. You can also follow Ian on his YouTube channel and on his Facebook page. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and tell your friends about us.